And a city where light is engineered to outshine the stars and skyscrapers are monuments to human ambition. Image isn't just everything, it's the only thing. Dubai is a kingdom of shimmering surfaces, a place where fortunes are built on perception and lives are meticulously curated for public consumption. But what happens when the flawless image develops a crack? When the smiling family portrait, beamed across social media, hides a secret so vile, so psychologically destructive, that it can only be resolved in an act of unspeakable violence? This is a story about a gilded dynasty, a betrayal that struck at its very heart, and the brutal murder that exposed the rotten, festering core hidden beneath all the gold and glitter. Hello, and a profound welcome to every single one of you, whether you're a dedicated follower who has been with us from the beginning or are just joining our community for the very first time. This is The Killer Next Door, the channel where we pull back the velvet curtain to investigate the profound darkness that lurks behind the most polished, respected, and enviable facades. To all of you watching from across the globe, I'm genuinely curious. Where in the world are you tuning in from at this very moment? Let me know your city and country in the comments below. I read every single one, and it's truly astounding to see our ever-growing community of truth seekers spanning the entire planet. Our story revolves around a name that was once synonymous with untouchable power and prestige in the Emirates, the Al-Mansoor family. At its helm stood Fahd Al-Mansoor, a patriarch who ruled his vast business empire and his immediate family with the same unyielding, iron will. His was a world of private jets that required no security checks, of multimillion-dollar deals sealed with a single, confident handshake, and of a reputation that commanded a potent mixture of fear and fawning respect across boardrooms. His son, Ryan Al-Mansoor, was the heir apparent, polished, media-savvy, and living a life of such curated luxury that he showcased it to millions of online followers. His world was a stream of hypercars, limited-edition designer watches, and a perfectly calibrated smile that seemed to promise he had life completely and utterly figured out. And then, there was Sophia Malik. She was more than just beautiful, she was intellectually sharp, emotionally radiant, and effortlessly graceful. As a successful social media influencer in her own right, she was seen as the perfect, modern complement to Ryan's public persona. She represented the new, aspirational face of the Al-Mansoor dynasty. Their wedding wasn't just an event. It was a spectacle covered by every glossy magazine from Paris to Hong Kong, their love story a carefully managed hashtag that trended for weeks. To the outside world, they were Dubai's undisputed golden couple, their lives a seamless, enviable stream of five-star holidays in the Maldives, exclusive charity galas, and couture outfits that cost more than most people's annual salaries. But behind the flawless filters, the sun-drenched Instagram posts, and the smiling paparazzi shots, a much darker, chilling reality was slowly taking root. The magnificent mansion, with its floor-to-ceiling windows offering breathtaking views and its silent, ever-present staff, was gradually transforming into a gilded cage for Sophia. Ryan, buckling under the immense, invisible pressure of upholding the formidable family name, began to reveal a darker, more troubling side, a controlling, possessive nature, a volatile temper that flashed in his eyes before he could control it, and a deep-seated insecurity that festered just beneath his polished, confident exterior. Sophia's natural sparkle began to dim. Her smiles and photos became more practiced, her eyes holding a subtle, weary distance that her millions of followers could never perceive. The first, almost imperceptible fissure in their perfect world appeared subtly, a hairline crack in the marble facade. Sophia started spending more and more time with the family patriarch, Fahd. On the surface, it seemed innocent, even beneficial. He was a charming, incredibly powerful mentor, offering her shrewd business advice and a sympathetic, listening ear when she felt increasingly isolated by Ryan's suffocating intensity. They were often seen deep in conversation at family gatherings, their shared laughter a little too easy, their camaraderie a little too exclusive. Ryan initially dismissed it, chalking it up to his father's famously charismatic and commanding nature. But a seed of gnawing suspicion was planted deep in his psyche. He began to notice the lingering, loaded glances across the dinner table, the way Sophia's phone would light up with a message from a contact saved simply as FM, and how she would quickly, almost guiltily, tilt the screen away from his view. The tension within the Al-Mansoor mansion became a palpable, third presence, a ghost in the machine of their luxurious lives. Conversations between Ryan and Sophia, once full of light and future plans, were now laced with unspoken accusations and a cold, simmering resentment. The very air in their home grew thick with the poison of jealousy and paranoia. Ryan, a master of controlling his public image, was terrifyingly aware that he was losing all control over his private life. And the feeling was eating him alive from the inside out. The catalyst for the coming storm, the event that would set this tragic sequence in irreversible motion, was Sophia's pregnancy. The news, delivered by a happy and hopeful Sophia, should have been a joyous occasion, a celebrated new chapter for the golden couple. But for Ryan, it was the trigger for his deepest, most primal fears. The subtle doubts he had struggled to suppress now roared to the forefront of his mind with terrifying force. The timing. His father's unsettling closeness to Sophia. It all felt suspiciously, horrifyingly convenient. During a routine prenatal appointment, the doctor recommended a standard genetic screening to check for any potential health issues. Ryan saw his opportunity, a chance to either silence his demons or have his worst nightmares confirmed. Using his immense influence and wealth, he covertly intercepted the process. He didn't just want a routine health report, he demanded a clandestine paternity test, conducted in absolute secrecy through a private, discreet lab he personally controlled. The wait for the results was a special kind of agony. He watched Sophia, her hand resting gently on her growing belly. A serene smile on her face, and his heart became a battlefield where love and dread waged a vicious war. The day the crisp, confidential envelope arrived by private courier, it felt less like mail and more like a verdict. Ryan retreated to his soundproofed, book-lined home office, the plush, expensive silence of the room amplifying the frantic, pounding rhythm of his own heart. With trembling, almost clumsy hands, he tore open the sealed flap. The words on the pristine, clinical page did not just deliver news, they detonated his entire world, shattering his identity into a million unrecognizable pieces. The child Sophia carried was not his. His vision blurred, the text swimming before his eyes. He read the devastating line again, and then again, as if the stark, scientific words might somehow rearrange themselves into a less horrific truth. But the cold, unemotional data was unyielding. And then, his disbelieving eyes dropped to the secondary analysis, the section identifying the biological father. The name printed on the page was a psychological atom bomb, obliterating every remaining shred of his reality: Fahad Al-Mansoor. The air was violently forced from his lungs. The lavishly appointed room seemed to tilt on its axis. This wasn't just betrayal, it was a profound, soul-crushing desecration. His wife and his father. The two people who were supposed to be the sacred, unshakable cornerstones of his life had colluded in the most profound, humiliating violation imaginable. The humiliation was so complete, so savage, it felt like a physical wound, a searing brand on his very being. The polished, confident air vanished in an instant, replaced by a raw, trembling vessel of pure, undiluted rage. He confronted his father in the man's vast, intimidating oak-paneled office, a room that smelled of aged leather, expensive cigar smoke, and absolute, unchallenged power. Ryan, his voice shaking with a barely controlled, volcanic fury, slammed the DNA report onto the immense, empty desk. Fahad did not flinch. He didn't deny it. He didn't show a flicker of shame. He simply leaned back in his imposing, throne-like chair, his expression one of cold, pragmatic calm. He called it a regrettable complication, a lapse in judgment. He spoke not of family, love, or remorse, but of legacy. Of the paramount importance of their name, their brand. He then offered Ryan a bribe, a $50 million stake in a lucrative new venture, a blatant silencing payment dressed up as a generous business opportunity. "We protect the empire above all else, Ryan," Fahad said, his voice devoid of any human emotion. "That is our first and only duty. Sentiment is a luxury we cannot afford." In that chilling moment, Ryan saw his father not as a parent, but as a monster in a bespoke suit. A man who saw people as disposable assets and morality as a negotiable inconvenience. The offer of money in exchange for his soul, for his right to rage, was the final, unforgivable insult. Ryan left the office a fundamentally changed man. The love he had once held for his wife had now curdled into a cold, hard hatred. The respect he had held for his father had transformed into a burning, all-consuming thirst for vengeance. He began to plan with a frightening, methodical clarity. The once relentlessly social Ryan became a brooding recluse within his own palatial home. He stopped posting on social media, his accounts falling into an uncharacteristic silence. He drank heavily, the expensive alcohol only fueling the corrosive fury eating away at his insides. He watched Sophia from a distance, now seeing her not as the woman he once loved, but as the living, breathing embodiment of his humiliation, a constant, walking reminder of his father's ultimate and most demeaning conquest. In the deep, dark recesses of his mind, he began to devise a scenario, a way to make the problem of Sophia disappear forever, while ensuring the blame would never, ever touch the hallowed Al-Mansoor name. The night of the murder, the mansion was eerily, profoundly quiet. Ryan had proactively dismissed the entire live-in staff for the evening, citing a desire for complete and utter privacy. He found Sophia in their sprawling master bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed and quietly sorting through a pile of impossibly tiny, delicate baby clothes, a soft, maternal smile on her face, a smile he now interpreted as a grotesque and deliberate mockery. The argument that ensued was not a passionate, loud shouting match, it was a cold, brutal, and devastating confrontation. He presented her with the DNA test, watching her like a hawk as her face crumpled, as her body was racked with sobs, as she tried to explain through tears the manipulation, the night she felt she had no power to refuse, the immense, terrifying power Fahad held over everyone in his orbit. But Ryan was far beyond listening. To him, her tears were not evidence of repentance, they were merely proof of her overwhelming guilt. In a sudden, blinding rage that bypassed all reason, his hands, as if with a will of their own, found their way around her neck. The struggle was brief, frantic, and utterly desperate. When he finally released his grip, stepping back as if from a toxic spill, Sophia lay lifeless on the expensive, intricately woven Persian rug, the tiny, pastel-colored baby clothes scattered around her like tragic, meaningless props. What followed was a chilling display of cold-blooded calculation. Ryan, the consummate master of public perception, began to meticulously stage the scene. He ran a bath, steeping expensive bath oils in the water. He carefully composed a suicide note on her personal tablet, painstakingly mimicking her speech patterns and turns of phrase. He used a fresh razor blade to create a precise, shallow cut on her wrist, positioning her arm over the edge of the bathtub. He then scattered her prescribed anti-anxiety medication across the cold, hard marble of the bathroom floor. He was not just crudely covering up a crime, he was an author carefully crafting a tragic, final narrative. The story would be one of a troubled, guilt-ridden young wife, tragically overwhelmed by the immense pressures of her gilded life, choosing to take her own life. By the time the desert sun began to paint the horizon with its first, faint light, the scene was perfectly set. Ryan, his own hands now clean, made the somber, performance-driven call to the family's private doctor and then to his father. His act as the grieving, shocked, and bewildered husband already beginning. The official response was swift and, just as the Al-Mansoors had anticipated and engineered, deeply accommodating. The police who initially attended, under clear and unspoken pressure from powerful, unseen voices, treated it as a clear-cut, tragic case of suicide. The death certificate was signed with unnerving speed. The body was quietly and quickly buried in a small, private family ceremony, away from the prying eyes of the media. The press, fed a carefully managed and sanitized press release, obediently ran stories focusing on tragedy and the hidden struggles of mental health among the elite. The formidable facade, for the moment, was holding strong, but one man was not convinced. Detective Kareem Haddad was a grizzled, veteran investigator with a weary cynicism etched into his face and a deep, ingrained distrust for the corrupting influence of extreme wealth. When he was called to the mansion for a secondary, routine look, his experienced, miss-nothing eyes immediately began to see the hairline cracks in Ryan's perfectly rehearsed story. The suicide note on the tablet felt too sterile, too grammatically perfect, completely devoid of the raw, chaotic emotion typical of such a final, desperate act. The placement of the scattered pills was too orderly, too staged. And then there were the faint, telltale bruises around Sophia's neck, almost completely and skillfully hidden by a thick layer of makeup, bruises whose shape and placement spoke unmistakably of fingers, not of a rope or a scarf. He noticed Ryan's entire demeanor. The performance of grief was technically there, the slumped shoulders, the quiet voice, but it didn't reach his eyes, which remained cold, watchful, and calculating. Fahad Al-Mansoor's very presence in the mansion was oppressive, his insistence on a swift and quiet conclusion to the entire matter feeling less like a grieving father-in-law and more like a ruthless CEO managing a critical public relations crisis. Despite the official case closure, Detective Haddad quietly kept the file open on his desk, a personal act of defiance. He began making discreet, unofficial inquiries. He patiently interviewed the mansion's extensive staff, who, under promises of strict anonymity, nervously whispered about the heated arguments they'd overheard in the weeks prior, about Ryan's recent, frighteningly volatile behavior, and about the strange, late-night burning of documents they had witnessed in the garden incinerator. The real, case-shattering break came from an unexpected and courageous source, Sophia's lifelong best friend, Lena. Grief-stricken, furious, and utterly defiant, she refused to believe the convenient suicide narrative for a single second. Sophia, she insisted to anyone who would listen, was certainly terrified in the days leading up to her death. But she was also resolute, a fighter. She had been secretly gathering evidence. A week after the quiet funeral, a plain, unmarked parcel arrived at Lena's apartment with no return address. Inside, wrapped in a piece of silk, was Sophia's personal tablet, a device everyone had assumed was lost or misplaced. With trembling, tear-streaked hands, Lena managed to access it. What she found was a digital treasure trove of desperation and courage. Sophia had recorded a series of voice memos, her voice often a trembling whisper, detailing Fahad's predatory manipulation and her escalating fear of Ryan's unpredictable rage. She had saved screenshots of threatening, veiled messages and photos of unexplained bruises on her arms and legs that she had carefully concealed. Most damningly, she had stored the results of her own, secretly conducted prenatal paternity test, the very same results Ryan had discovered. It was a mirror image of the report that had ultimately sealed her fate. She had named the folder, "The Truth They Will Kill Me For." Lena, understanding the weight of what she held, took the tablet directly to Detective Haddad. This was no longer a matter of suspicion, it was a roadmap of evidence. Armed with this new, explosive information, Haddad moved with lightning speed, obtaining warrants before the formidable Al-Mansoor legal machine could fully react. A forensic re-examination of the master suite, now officially treated as an active crime scene, revealed what had been missed or ignored before: a minute, almost invisible speck of blood on the carved wooden bed frame that matched Sophia's DNA. Its placement completely inconsistent with the staged scene in the bathroom. Ryan's carefully constructed alibi began to unravel under the weight of detailed, relentless scrutiny. Confronted in a stark, brightly lit interrogation room with the undeniable evidence from the tablet and the new forensic analysis, Ryan's carefully constructed composure finally and completely shattered. The story spilled out of him, not with any sense of remorse, but with a twisted, unsettling sense of grim justification. He described the betrayal in graphic detail, the all-consuming humiliation, the volcanic rage that had utterly consumed him. He admitted to the murder, detailing the staging of the scene with a chilling, almost clinical detachment. It was a confession born not from guilt, but from the warped perspective of a man who truly believed, in the deepest part of his soul, that he was the ultimate, wronged victim in this sordid tragedy. Fahad Al-Mansoor was arrested separately at his corporate headquarters, charged with obstruction of justice, coercion, and complicity after the fact. His vast empire, built over a lifetime on a foundation of sheer power and unassailable influence, was now publicly and permanently associated with scandal, moral decay, and murder. The trial was a relentless, international media circus. Ryan Al-Mansoor, the once glamorous, untouchable heir, was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in a high-security desert prison. His world of private jets and luxury replaced by the stark reality of a concrete cell and a narrow, metal-framed bed. Fahad Al-Mansoor, the patriarch who truly believed his immense wealth and power could insulate him from any and all consequences, was convicted on multiple felony charges, his legacy forever tarnished, his name now a byword for corruption in the very city he helped build. In the end, the mighty Al-Mansoor empire did not fall to a corporate rival or a sudden market crash. It was destroyed from within, routed by the very secrets, lies, and toxic arrogance it sought so desperately to bury. The relentless, obsessive pursuit of a perfect public image had led directly to an utterly depraved and bloody private reality. Sophia Malik, silenced in the most brutal way imaginable, had her truth heard in the one place the family's immense wealth and influence could not control, a public court of law. This harrowing story forces us to ask a profoundly difficult question: which was the greater crime here? The final, violent act that ended a young, promising life? Or the systemic corruption, the predatory behavior, and the profound betrayal that created the fertile conditions for it? Was Ryan a born monster, or was he a tragic, poisoned product of a monstrous, gilded environment? I want to hear your perspective. Who do you believe holds the ultimate, greatest responsibility in this complex tragedy? Share your thoughts, your theories, and your reflections in the comments below. If this deep dive into a story where immense power, unspeakable betrayal, and cold-blooded murder collided behind the world's most exclusive closed doors captivated you, if you believe that no amount of wealth or social status should ever be a shield for the truth, then you are definitely in the right place. Help us uncover more of these hidden stories festering in the shadows by liking this video, subscribing to The Killer Next Door, and hitting that notification bell so you never miss an upload. There are countless more stories waiting for a voice, and together, we can ensure they are heard. Thank you for watching.